All right, let's kick things off. Welcome back to the deep dive. You know we love going deep on a topic, so today we're strapping on our leg warmers, grabbing our Rubik's Cubes, and taking a trip back to the 1980s.
Oh yeah, the 80s. Big hair, bold colors, and some of the most iconic movies ever made.
Absolutely. And we've got a ton of great sources about these movies. I'm talking Back to the Future, the Goonies, Ferris Bueller's Day Off, the whole shebang.
We're gonna unearth the stories behind the magic, go beyond the nostalgia, and really dissect why these movies still hold up today.
Okay, so let's start with a classic. You can't talk about 80s movies without mentioning Back to the Future. I mean, that DeLorean time machine, it's practically synonymous with time travel itself.
It's become an icon, yeah. But, it's funny, that iconic DeLorean almost didn't happen.
Really? I can't imagine it any other way. What were they thinking of using instead?
Well, early drafts of the script actually had the time machine as a refrigerator.
A refrigerator? Seriously?
Yeah, I know, right? Hard to picture Marty McFly cruising around in a Frigidaire.
Totally.
Yeah.
But, why a refrigerator? Was it like a budget thing, or?
Well, budget might have been a factor later on, but initially it was actually a safety issue.
Safety.
Yeah. Spielberg, who was the executive producer, was really concerned about kids imitating the movie. I mean, imagine kids climbing into refrigerators thinking they could time travel.
Right, makes sense. Spielberg's movies always had that appeal to younger audiences.
Exactly. They didn't want to be responsible for any accidents.
Makes sense. So how'd they end up with the DeLorean then? It's such a perfect fit, that futuristic yet retro vibe.
Well, it was perfect, wasn't it? The gull-wing doors, the stainless steel body. It just screamed 80s cool.
Exactly. And it worked perfectly with the whole time travel concept.
It embodied that idea of taking something ordinary, a car, and transforming it into something extraordinary, like a time machine.
I love that. Okay, speaking of ordinary things turned extraordinary, your notes on the Goonies mentioned something about a giant octopus.
Ah, yes. The infamous octopus scene, ultimately cut from the final film.
Wait, there's footage of this somewhere. I've got to see this.
Sadly, the scene itself is still kind of lost to the ages. But the fact that it exists, even a hint of it in the end credits, it just adds to the film's mystique.
Right, like a little hidden treasure for fans to uncover, so they actually filmed it. Wow.
It speaks to that 80s filmmaking spirit, They weren't afraid to just go for it, try crazy ideas, and see what stuck.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, let's switch gears a bit. From treasure hunting to high school shenanigans, Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Who hasn't dreamt of pulling a Ferris and skipping school for a day of adventure?
The ultimate fantasy, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that parade scene with Ferris taking over the float. Pure joy. It's so iconic.
Yeah, it captures that feeling of living life to the fullest. And get this, they actually filmed that scene during a real parade in Chicago.
No way. Not a set, a real parade.
It was real. All those reactions, the crowd singing and dancing along, it was totally genuine.
Wow. That's incredible. I mean, talk about immersive filmmaking, right?
It definitely took a lot of planning, but the authenticity it brought to the film, it's undeniable.
Totally agree. Okay, so we've got time travel, pirate treasure, and a high schooler who's a master of ditching class. Seems like 80s movies were all about pushing boundaries, defying expectations.
Definitely. There was this boldness, this willingness to break the mold. It wasn't just escapism, it was a reflection of that cultural shift happening.
I like that. A reflection of a cultural shift. All right, we're just getting started. But before we go any further, let's take a quick detour and talk about the music of the 80s. Because let's face it, those films had some killer soundtracks.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the 80s was the MTV era. Music videos were huge. And those iconic songs, they became as memorable as the movies themselves.
Totally. Think about Flashdance or Footloose. You can't separate those films from their music. They defined the sound of a generation.
It's like the music was another character in the movie, driving the story, setting the mood, amplifying the emotions.
Okay, so we've got iconic visuals, killer soundtracks, and stories that push the boundaries. I'm ready to dive even deeper.
Let's do it. Those soundtracks weren't just about using existing hits either. Some of these films actually launched careers. Like, think about Irene Cara in Flashdance.
Oh, totally. And Kenny Loggins with Footloose? Those songs became anthems. They totally captured that 80s energy.
It was a perfect storm, really. You had MTV, the rise of synth pop and new wave, and a generation of filmmakers who really understood how music could elevate a film.
Okay, so we've got these visually stunning movies, incredible soundtracks, stories that really push boundaries, but they weren't afraid to tackle some serious themes too, right? Like, I was really struck by The Breakfast Club.
Ah, yeah, The Breakfast Club. You know, on the surface, it's a high school movie, kids in detention, but underneath, it's so much more.
Right. It's about identity, social pressure, fitting in, those teenage struggles that never really go away.
John Hughes just had this amazing ability to capture the teenage experience, that angst, that vulnerability, the confusion. He made it feel so real.
It's why those films still resonate today. Those characters, the jock, the princess, the brain, the criminal, the basket case, they're like these archetypes we all recognize.
And we see ourselves in them, right?
Totally. Okay, talking about emotional films, we got to mention E.T. That movie knows how to pull at the heartstrings.
Oh, E.T. Pure Spielberg magic.
It's about friendship, compassion, believing in the impossible. And E.T. himself, such an amazing character.
And created with practical effects, you know? No CGI back then.
It's incredible what they achieved. And the music, John Williams, he just nailed it. That score, it adds so much emotion to the film.
It's the whole package, really. E.T., it's a masterpiece. It reminds us that there's still good in the world, that even when things are tough, there's hope.
I love that. Okay, but 80s cinema wasn't all heartwarming stories, right? There was a darker side too, like the Terminator. I mean, talk about Cold War anxieties, man versus machine.
And Blade Runner, with its dystopian future and those questions about what it means to be human, those films really tapped into some of the deeper anxieties of the time.
Right, and Platoon gave us this raw, unflinching look at the Vietnam War. Really powerful stuff.
Those filmmakers weren't afraid to challenge audiences, to make us confront uncomfortable truths, and that's important, right?
Absolutely. Okay, so we've established 80s filmmakers weren't just about entertaining, they wanted to provoke, to make us think.
And they did it with style.
Exactly. But even when they tackled serious issues, they never lost that sense of fun, that adventure that defined the decade.
It was a unique time for filmmaking, wasn't it? Experimentation, innovation, taking risks.
Totally agree. Okay, we've talked about the big hits, but what about those hidden gems, the 80s movies that might have flown under the radar?
Oh, there are so many. We could do a whole deep dive just on those. But let's start with Labyrinth.
Oh, Labyrinth. That's a classic. Jim Henson, David Bowie, puppets, goblins, magic. What's not to love?
Such a visual feast, and that soundtrack, Bowie's music just elevates the whole film. Oh, and another hidden gem, Sing Street.
Oh, I love Sing Street. It's set in Dublin, a bunch of kids forming a band, falling in love. Pure 80s energy.
Classic coming-of-age story, right?
Exactly. And with some amazing music, too. It reminds us that even the smallest stories can have a huge impact.
And that's something you see throughout 80s cinema, you know, those big adventures, the comedies, the dramas, but also those smaller, character-driven stories.
Right, it's all about human connection, the power of dreams, overcoming obstacles. Yeah. It's been awesome revisiting all these films, the classics, and uncovering some hidden gems. But let's talk about the legacy of 80s movies. How have they influenced filmmakers today? What themes still resonate with audiences after all these years?
Wow, yeah, that's a big question. The impact of 80s cinema is huge, you know? You see it everywhere, in modern blockbusters and indie films.
I mean, the visual style, the storytelling, the music, it's all there.
And those themes, right? Believing in yourself, the power of friendship, facing your fears.
Those are timeless messages.
They are. They speak to something universal, something that connects with us on a deep level, no matter when we watch them.
I agree. And I think one theme that's especially relevant today is hope.
Hope.
Yeah. Even when things are tough, these films remind us that things can get better, that we can create a better future.
That's a powerful message, especially in today's world.
It is, and it's a reminder that we all have the power to make a difference, you know, to fight for what we believe in, to never give up on our dreams.
That's a great way to put it.
So the legacy of 80s cinema, it's vast, it's complex, but at its heart, it's about the human spirit, the power of stories, and the belief that anything is possible.
And with that, we've reached the end of our 80s deep dive.
We hope you enjoyed this journey back in time and maybe discovered something new along the way.
Maybe you'll revisit an old favorite or check out one of those hidden gems we mentioned.
And no matter what you choose to watch, just remember to keep exploring the world of film, you know.
And never lose that sense of wonder.
Until next time, keep those 80s vibes alive. You know, it's amazing how these 80s movies, they become so much more than just, you know, movies. They're part of our culture.
Yeah, they really are. It's like they offer this shared language, a way for people to connect. Like you quote a line from Ghostbusters and instantly, boom, you've got a connection with someone.
Right. Speaking of Ghostbusters, I was looking at your notes and it really struck me. That film wasn't just a comedy, it was a phenomenon.
Oh, absolutely. Toys, cartoons, that theme song. Everybody knows it.
It's true.
Yeah.
But you know what's interesting? It was funny, sure, but it also tapped into some real anxieties people had back then.
Yeah, you're right. The 80s had this whole fascination with the paranormal, unsolved mysteries, Ripley's Believe It or Not. Everyone was into that stuff.
Right. So Ghostbusters, it kind of played with those fears, but it also showed that, hey, even regular people, they can face the unknown.
It's that blend of humor and heart that made it work. You laugh, you get scared, but ultimately it's a story about overcoming your fears.
Makes sense. And that idea, blending different genres, exploring deeper themes, you see that in a lot of other 80s movies too, like take Back to the Future, for example.
Yeah. It's time travel, sure, but it's also about family, destiny, standing up for what you believe in.
Right. So much more going on beneath the surface. And while we're talking about movies that blended genres and really made you think, I got to mention Blade Runner. That film, wow.
Blade Runner, now that's a masterpiece. Visually stunning, that neo-noir sci-fi vibe.
Yeah.
It really makes you question what it means to be human.
Absolutely. And the performances, Rutger Hauer as Roy Batty, that Tears in Rain monologue, so powerful.
It's iconic. That speech, it gets me every time.
Me too. And the way Ridley Scott, the director, created that world, the futuristic city, the rain, those neon lights, it's both beautiful and unsettling at the same time.
He captured something special, that's for sure. And the film's themes, they're more relevant now than ever. Artificial intelligence, the ethics of technology, it's all there.
Wow, you're so right. Okay, we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive, haven't we? Comedies, thrillers, music, special effects, the whole 80s cinematic experience.
We have, and it's amazing how these films, they still resonate with people today.
It's true. It goes to show those themes, friendship, courage, hope, finding yourself, overcoming obstacles, they're timeless.
They're universal. They speak to something deep within us,
And as we wrap up, I think it's important to remember that the story of 80s cinema, it's not over.
It's still being written?
Exactly. These films, they continue to inspire new filmmakers. You see their influence everywhere.
It's an exciting time to be a film fan.
I agree. So to everyone listening, thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the magic of 80s movies.
We hope you enjoyed the ride.
Maybe you learned something new, maybe you rediscovered a favorite, or maybe you're inspired to check out something you've never seen before.
Just keep exploring, keep watching.
And most importantly, never lose that sense of wonder.
Until next time.
Keep those 80s vibes alive.